do is then go and advertise it again in the evening, and hopefully all will be well. I'm just waiting for Andrew Ellison to arrive. For those who don't know, it's what it says on the tin. It's "Where's the UK going as a nation?" And I do apologise for the long hair and the almost Hitler-like hair. Oh, it's awful. And I'm just waiting for him to turn up about any minute now. Oh, God. So I'm just being horribly vain. Right. I didn't have... Ah, here he is now. And here we go. Good morning, Andrew.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Good. I can. Yes, good.
Slight change. I've immediately put it to live stream on YouTube because looking at it, I wasn't sure whether I would be able to get it from storage and upload it to YouTube successfully in time for this evening. So I thought I'd better bite the bullet, make it go live, and advertise it again this evening. So those who are looking forward to seeing it will still get to see it at that time.
Yeah.
Yes. The UK. Where is the UK going as a nation? Which is a very broad question, but let's see what we can do.
Well, how do we describe this? As the constituent parts of the UK, I think it's getting rather troublesome. Certainly what is happening in Scotland. The Prime Minister has said that he will not give the SNP another referendum, and he's not one for about 40 years or something along those lines. But, you know, although the SNP is going through some local difficulties, shall we say, at the moment in Edinburgh, and we look forward to watching Alex Salmond at 12:30 p.m. on Friday, they are going to win the Holyrood elections without any doubt about that. And if they do get a big mandate, then of course the calls for another referendum, as it would have been in their manifesto, will grow. So that is a little bit sort of worrying. I don't have any fears about Wales, to be perfectly honest, because the nationalist movement doesn't seem to be very strong in Wales, not as it is in Scotland, but of course that could change. And then there's the sort of the unionist, nationalist side of things in Northern Ireland, where unionists are gradually getting outnumbered. And of course that could mean something completely different as well. So where's the UK going? Well, I'm not quite sure. I mean, maybe in 10 years' time, we can have another conversation, Paul, and see what has happened. I think if we're still intact in 10 years, we're probably going to still be intact for a while. I'll start off with that. There are lots of other things as to where the UK is going, but I'll start off with that.
Yeah, it reminds me of my wife, who's half Northern Irish, was laughing away at a laptop yesterday. And she had found this comedy sketch, which she shared on her Twitter feed, of basically 6 individuals, each meant to be, one's meant to be England, the other Scotland, the other Wales, the other Northern Ireland, Fifth Republic of Ireland, 6th EU. And Northern Ireland and England saying, look, guys, maybe it's best I go it alone, you know, move out the house. And Northern Ireland's like, well, I want to stay. And well, Scotland wants to move out. He hasn't moved out yet, but he's yet to move out. And the Republic of Ireland saying, look, why don't you come and stay with me? You know, and you know, we can always go around to the EU's house where they've got plasma TV and all the mod cons, and we can pop round there everywhere like. And then in the end, you get Wales going, well, what about me? What if I want to move out? And of course, everyone laughs at Wales. So I think throughout the bit of dialogue, it was laughable throughout because it did echo something, and you do get that sense that the UK is slowly tearing apart, which is to the point now where I wonder where we've passed the point of no return. Do you see a point where we can keep the UK?
I think we still can, but we have to really fight for it. We shouldn't rest on our laurels and think, oh, everything will be all right. I mean, look at the blind panic there was in 2014 when a rogue poll came out, if you remember that. Rogue poll came out, said that independence was in the lead, and Prime Minister's Questions was cancelled. And Cameron and Clegg came straight away to Scotland to appeal for the union. And of course, Cameron offered a lot of bribes as well, lots more money for Scotland to stay in the union. And in the end, it worked out, but it was a big gamble. And of course, the terms of that referendum were completely one-sided. Cameron gave Alex Salmond just about everything that he wanted. So I'm sure we wouldn't make a mistake like that. But we just have to fight for it. We are, I genuinely believe we are greater than the sum of our parts. And we have to promote all the wonderful success stories of the UK, of Britain, and say that there's going to be many more of them as well if we work together. Even before you get into the economics, because I just don't think the economics add up at all for an independent Scotland. But there's a lot more that unites us than divides us, and we've just got to be very positive about that. At the last referendum, it was always very, very negative, particularly from George Osborne.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are two things come to mind with that. One is I can understand the temptation of Scotland wanting to leave the UK in the light of both Brexit and the current situations with COVID and everything else, where the economy is going kaput, where it might seem that being being independent would have the added incentive if they rejoin the EU. And that's
that's a big if, though, isn't it? It's a big if, though, isn't it?
But that's the big if that the pro-independence lot in Scotland are working on. Having independent Scotland, we rejoin the EU, we'll end up being in an economically better place than we would be if we remained in the UK. And it's the same with...
Well, yes, they said... Go, I'll let you finish your point.
No. And it's a similar case with Northern Ireland. There will always be that tension within Northern Ireland, but economics does play its part. That's why one of the many, many reasons Northern Ireland remained part of the UK, one of them was all the industry in the island of Ireland in the Victorian and Edwardian era was in the north. In London, in Belfast, with the shipbuilding and everything else. So it was economically advantageous for them to remain in the UK, whereas now there would be an argument that it would be I'm not saying I agree with all of what I'm saying about Scotland and Northern Ireland. I'm saying these are the arguments that put forward. It's economically advantageous to leave the union.
When it comes to Scotland, majority of trade is done with England anyway. So it's always good to have good relations, even if it's an independent country, we want very good relations. And there's no way that we're going to erect a hard border between England and Scotland. I mean, that's just not going to happen in any case. They are very reliant on British taxpayers, and as the majority of British people, over 80% are English, it's safe to say that they're reliant on English taxpayers to give them extra funding, which is what they get. North Sea oil, well, that's totally unreliable. I mean, if Scotland had voted for independence in 2014, they're being bust by about 2060 because the price of oil just plummeted. I can't remember by how much, but it was an enormous amount. I think it was about a quarter of the price for a barrel than it was back in 2014. So that economically, they're going to find it very tough. Because let's face it, the only reason they can get free prescriptions and free this and free that is because of the subsidies they get from English taxpayers. And we don't get the free prescriptions, but they do. I could say the same goes for Wales, really, in Northern Ireland. So I think economically, they're still better off being part of the UK. And going back to, as I said, a big if about Scotland joining the EU, of course, we know that Spain is likely to raise an objection because of Catalan. And it will be a long process, and they will not have their own currency. Certainly won't keep the pound or anything like that. They will be forced to take the euro. And look to the future, the euro is just completely unsustainable.
There are those issues. I mean, as I said, I'm not exactly saying that they're right. I'm saying that this is what. But I mean, the issues certainly with the future of the UK is it does feel somehow that we're at a tipping point, and it's not with regards to economic we do have an economic problem in this country. A lot of it, some of it will be down to COVID. I think even you as a pro-Leave would appreciate there would be economic teething problems as a result of Brexit. That's how you might see it. I would probably see it as a result of Brexit, full stop. So, and obviously there, some are looking for another trading partner. I know the government's trying to get a good relationship, get us involved with the Trans-Pacific Group, which is about 12 nations. I question whether the UK would have any clout there, and geographically it does not make sense for a variety of reasons, both in terms of trade and pure geography. But Britain is facing a potential economic crisis all in all. How do we get out?
The world is, though, Paul, isn't it? The world is, really.
Okay, let me put it another way, because I did want to come to this point at some point in our discussion. In the 1970s, there was a global economic crisis, but that didn't stop, say, the Conservative Party in the UK, to a lesser extent, the left of the Labour Party, coming forward and saying, our country is in a crisis, this is how we get out of it. Now, in this circumstance, do you think with Britain, would you argue it's more of the same? Or would you argue that there needs to be a new way of looking at an economic and political future for the UK?
Well, the economy was doing reasonably well before COVID, and I mean, let's be honest. We don't know, because we can't just sort of dismiss COVID here. I mean, it will have wreaked an enormous amount of damage to our economy. I felt that the Bank of England's rather upbeat assessment a week or two ago was rather upbeat, too upbeat for my liking. I hammer on about hospitality and events. Hospitality industry, pubs and restaurants tend to get mentioned quite a lot. But, I said in an interview that I did on the radio earlier this week that pubs and restaurants in my neck of the woods have been closed since the 4th of November and have never reopened. And most of them don't have significant outdoor space, if any outdoor space. So the earliest they're going to open is the 17th of May, which is, 6.5 months, a very long time. I was reminded by someone on Twitter that, of course, in Manchester, they're being closed in September. And that's going to be more like 8 months. How resilient are those businesses going to be? I don't know, but I think there's going to be a lot of job losses and a lot of closures. Because although I agree with the furlough scheme, I think the government had no option but to do it. It's still, for many people, it's a very expensive form of an employment benefit, because those jobs are not going to be there when the furlough scheme ends. So we're immediately sort of just kicking the can down the road a little bit. So there's going to be a lot of economic damage, and we're going to have to pull back from that. I mean, we were barely pulling back from the economic crash of 12 years ago now, when COVID struck. So there's going to be a lot of economic damage. I don't think it's really going to be caused by Brexit at all. As you said, you may think it's because of Brexit we've got these problems. I just said that the teething troubles, but they just do seem to be teething troubles at the moment. And as far as the various trade deals that Liz Truss in particular is trying to sign up to and arrange around the world, well, that's just going to help. Although I was reminded by a friend of mine, an economist, Ruth Lee, that trade deals merely oil the wheels of commerce, but it doesn't stop people trading. If people want to trade, they will trade. And I imagine also that with the Pacific Partnership, that a lot of the deal will be services as well. So and people are much more mobile in that respect.
It's more of a question of what money people have to spend, and where we go from there. But I think we're in broad agreement on these issues. I'm just concerned as to where, I think where we may disagree is the depth and how long and how troublesome. We're very...
If I just interject there, though, those people who have been on furlough and do actually have jobs to go back to, they probably have got quite a bit of disposable income in their pockets. And they probably will book holidays. They probably will go out and spend some money. So there will be a little bit of a bounce in that respect. So in the short term, I can see that. it is in the long term, which is, well, you know, at the stage you get 5 economists in a room, you get about 10 different opinions. You know, it's how serious this economic damage is. I just feel that there is going to be some serious economic damage, and it's going to take a few years to repair. Some economists think it will take a couple of years, others say maybe 3 or 4 or 5. It's very difficult to say, but we're not out of this at the moment. Until we leave lockdowns and restrictions and life goes back to what, you know, as normal as it possibly can, then we're going to find out how much economic damage that has actually been done. And until that point, we're probably doing a bit of crystal ball gazing, really.
So basically, what you're arguing is we can't really decide what kind of future Britain has until further along the road, when we perhaps have a more clear picture of where the economy is going and how businesses are doing and the structure of the UK.
Well, yes, there is that. I mean, it is economically, certainly. I mean, politically, there's got to be political will for the United Kingdom to break up. That's why we've got to fight in Scotland to prevent that. Northern Ireland, I'll give a plug actually, because I've organised a webinar for Tuesday, the 23rd of March at 6 p.m. And we're looking at the State of the Union, so the Freedom Association webinar, and how we fight for it. And I've got Brian Monteith on there representing Scotland, former MSP. I've got Kate Hoey representing Northern Ireland. I've got David Jones, the former Welsh Secretary, on there as well. And little lowly old me will be flying the flag for England. So we are going to be looking at that. And I'd be interested to find out more from Kate, to be perfectly honest, just what we can do in Northern Ireland, because it's it's like most people in England, you don't tend to get involved in Northern Irish politics because you feel it's a bit of a minefield, metaphorically, and it was a minefield literally at one point.
It was. I mean, well, there are two things come to mind with that. One, Kate Hoey is a Marmite politician in herself, so how what her views would be people will either strongly agree or strongly disagree. With regards to Northern Ireland, yes, I speak partly now as someone who for the last 8 years, or coming up to 9 years before long, is Northern Irish relatives by marriage, albeit on the unionist side, but enough where I can see having been there. And I do remember when my wife and I went on holiday in Northern Ireland 2 years ago, some months before the pandemic, or 18 months ago. And then the year before that, we went on holiday to the Republic of Ireland, because it looked like Rachel's, they were sort of, in the business she's in, they were probably going to move offices. So there was a possibility, faint, but possibility at that stage that she could be working in Dublin. So if we just on the off chance we'd emigrate to Dublin, I was like, well, you've hardly been to the Republic, have you? We might as well have a look in case we might live there. So we spent a week there. And the thing that came through, because we arrived at Cork, the international airport in Cork, got our hire car, switched on the radio, first thing discussed Brexit, how, where it affects the Republic. And listening to people, and even overhearing the odd conversation when we went for a meal at a hotel in O'Connell Street in Dublin, and the following year, just talking with Rachel's relatives in Northern Ireland, you did get that sense that where we've gone wrong as Britain with the island of Ireland. And I'm deliberately and for accuracy talking in very broad terms here, continually made mistakes, is that we have not listened to either of the communities properly, both unionist and nationalist, come in, taken one brief look at the situation and gone, right, here's the answers to all your problems. And we need to, as an aside, I do think, and I hope something comes out of your discussion, although I hope you listen to people other than Kate Hoey. there needs to be more listening with Northern Ireland, and we don't listen enough to either community.
Yes, I can probably agree with you on that. I mean, I've only ever been to Northern Ireland once, actually. That was a business trip to Belfast.
Yes.
I've been to the Republic of Ireland on a few occasions, in all fairness. So I do know that the Republic of Ireland, certainly southeast, certainly pretty well. I've been down to sort of Wicklow and Wexford and places like that. And I have got involved in a political discussion in a bar. I was brave. He seemed to be very friendly at the beginning, and but when I described it as the island of Ireland, he said, "Oh, no, it's not an island. We're a country." I thought, well, yes, but you're also an island, you know. If you count Northern Ireland at the top, and you want Northern Ireland to be part of Ireland, you know. But anyway, I was I was getting into trouble there in a hotel bar. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more listening, but that's part of politics, isn't it? I mean, I'll give you a little bit of a left field example here, but I found out something yesterday, and bear in mind I work full time in politics. I should have known about, and that back in September last year, Hull City Council and the East Riding of Yorkshire Council submitted proposals to the government for one of these. What's it called again? Oh, I can't, the title. It's a mayor basically, but it's to cover both, an elected mayor to cover both local authorities. So the local authorities themselves still remain intact, but you have this mayor, and this attracts more funding and things like that. And they plan to have elections, if the government accepts this, in May next year.
Yeah,
that's the first I've heard of it. People haven't heard of it. So basically, there's been no consultation with the public at all. And it's just been presented to us as a fait accompli. Now, that's going to anger a lot of people. I mean, I'm willing to get a petitioner. I'm going to remain completely neutral. It might be a good idea, it might be a bad idea, but it's the democratic principle of all of this that says that people should be consulted with any major change. No one political party had ever put this in their manifesto. There isn't a democratic mandate to do this without first consulting with the people. And now I think if you go back into the 1990s and the Good Friday Agreement, there was a lot of consultation with the various sides, the nationalist and the unionist side, and it was brokered by the United States as well. And that was good, but how much listening have we really done since then? There's always a threat, if Stormont breaks up, there's a disagreement, there's always that threat of imposing direct rule on Northern Ireland, and I don't think that goes down very well in either community. I mean, it's not just a Sinn Féin DUP type of thing. It's on both sides. Nobody really wants that. And it just need to sort of broker a settlement and move forward. Now, eventually that was done, but I mean, Stormont was, wasn't sitting for 2 years. I think it was about 2 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure. My memory's a bit hazy on that. But
it was a long time. It was a long time.
But I mean,
so yeah, more listening needs to be done.
What do you think? The other point I wanted to make along that, before I got sidetracked to the island of Ireland, as your friend at the bar disagrees with the phrase, was with regards to the point where if there's the point of no return, there is a point of no return, and the UK splits up. Where is England's role?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because obviously, England is the economic powerhouse of the UK, particularly the City of London. So as it moves forward economically, it can survive. I've got no doubts about that. But of course, we have a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. There's NATO to think about. There's lots of other things to think about.
Wouldn't that be under question because the UK split up? I could see, for instance, some countries going, well, England is now effectively, you've got a different country. I mean, there were some, issues were raised alongside this when the USSR fell, and it's like Russia be in the scoot. Now, obviously, that was ironed out very quickly, but the United Kingdom is not neither ideologically, neither politically, but neither geographically either in a comparable position, is it?
Look, there's a big question mark about whether that will continue. There is. I mean, we don't know what would happen. I mean, the Russian example is a good one because quickly got around that.
Yeah.
I could see the European Union manoeuvring in that respect because I mean it's already won a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council. It would have liked Britain and France to give up their seats in favour of the EU, but I think there'll be a bit of manoeuvring from the EU in that department. So let's see what happens there. As far as NATO is concerned, I think we'll still be spending as a country at least 2% of GDP on defence. We're going to have problems, of course, because of our nuclear submarines being based in Scotland. So that in itself is going to create a problem, defence-wise for us. That would have to be sorted. So yeah, there are a variety of question marks, Paul, and you're right to raise them as to where we move forward as a country. But of course, it could still be sort of England and Wales and Northern Ireland, couldn't it? Just without Scotland.
That would I could see in that situation, or there would be more notice on Northern Ireland as to its sovereignty and its future, and certainly I could see the nationalist element in Wales raising their voice. And all you need after that is a further economic, blowout in what is left of the UK, and then you've got, those questions become more pertinent. Political instability nearly always comes along after economic instability. They always seem.
Yes, it does. It does. Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, I agree with you entirely on that. It does. I mean, that's why I said the nationalist cause in Wales is not very big. But I did say at the moment, and I said at the beginning, didn't I? I said, that things could change. And of course, with Assembly elections coming up this year, Plaid Cymru could do a little bit better. And then in 4 years' time, it could do a little bit better again. And who knows how that's going to work. But at the moment, Labour still seems to have a really firm grip in Wales, but it does have a grip in Wales. And, ever since 1999, the First Minister of Wales has always been Labour. Things just went badly wrong in Scotland, didn't they? For Labour, anyway.
Well, it's been going bad for any party that isn't the SNP.
Well, yes, quite. Well, it's basically unionist and nationalist, isn't it? I mean, we use that term quite freely when we talk about Northern Ireland. But from what everyone tells me, and I speak to commentators up in Scotland, it's just forget the traditional left-right boundaries. They just don't exist anymore. He said because you've got the SNP, which is a left-wing party, Labour, which is a left-wing party. You've got the Greens, Liberal Democrats, they're all pretty much left-leaning. The only sort of right-leaning party is the Conservatives. So therefore, if you're a bit right of centre, you've only got one party to vote for. It really isn't an alternative. And the other parties are doing badly because they don't want independence. So therefore, you've got the lead unionist party now, which is the Conservative Party, and you've got the lead nationalist party, which is the SNP. And that is the way that people are going to vote. And I can't see a way back for Labour in Scotland at all, whilst this continues.
Well, I can't. There has to. I see your point entirely. My only answer to that last point is the SNP cannot govern Scotland forever. Something has got to give, whether that will be Labour coming into the fore or not. But I mean, it does. It does also raise another point I wanted to make. Do you think that the way to save the UK is to federalise it? Along the lines of in Canada or Australia. I know it's
or Germany. To quote a closer, well, Germany is federalised in that respect, isn't it? So what you thinking of? Sorry, so you've broke up slightly there, Paul. Could you just say that again?
Germany's always been federalised, though, from the very start because of the nature
Well,
of.
from the very start, yes, because there used to be separate countries, and Germany just came into existence in the late 19th century. Yeah, no, I get like that. So, are you thinking that we should have a federal system in the sense we've got the equivalent of a governor of an area?
I'm thinking broadly in those terms, but I'm thinking specifically as like in Canada, where you've got your governments and your premiers and and so forth, and you
Yeah,
have that. That would be England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, or perhaps England in 2 or 3 constituent parts. But Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland certainly having their own federal, because England, United Kingdom is not just it's a multicultural country and it's a very distinctive. It's got its own distinctive constituent parts, and where it's gone wrong is when some of its distinctive parts have been ignored at the expense of others. And we do. I'm wondering whether the only way we can save the union is to recognise the elements that leads to the nationalism, and to perhaps give that recognition, but at the same time saying it is in the advantage to remain. So you've got a kind of federation, as it were.
yeah. I mean, I don't know the Canadian system too well. I just have basically a brief outline of it. But if I look at what devolution has brought in the UK, I mean, apart from the overall sort of economy, apart from defence and security, basically Scotland runs itself. I mean, it runs its health services, it runs education, it runs everything. So how much further could you really go other than actually having independence?
I mean, how much of its own economy does it run?
Well, yeah, I see your point there. Although they do have obviously a finance minister there who does a budget and things like that. I mean, it is basically the overall economy of the United Kingdom, I suppose. But to give them more, I mean, I just don't see how you could give them any more financial responsibility without it basically just being just short of independence. And so close to independence, they may as well have it.
That's a fair point. It's a fair point.
I mean, it's if you want to, I mean, obviously England wasn't a country at one point. We had different kingdoms, didn't we? Mercia and Wessex and other places. There could be an argument for much greater devolution in England, but then that doesn't really help our discussion on the union, does it? Because I don't think people in Scotland are really bothered about how England governs itself.
No, and I also think from where I am, and I live not far from London, I think part of it is part of the problem with England is not so much devolution. It's political devolution. I think it's economic devolution that we need. We need to make sure that say, for example, in the 19th century, Liverpool, Manchester, places like that were big economic centres of power in the UK and within England, and Birmingham as well was a prestigious place. And these are still very important cities, but we need to get back to that situation where people go for jobs and see the economic outreach in those places. And politicians, the thing that frustrates me is politicians have tried this for decades to do something about this, and we almost get nowhere. And we end up with situations where I live about 40 minutes to an hour's train commute journey to central London, and my wife before lockdown and many of us go who live in these areas work in London. So you end up with this, and of course we all know about the train services in the morning where they are so packed it's unbelievable that they have to run every 10 minutes because we're not talking about London. We're talking about trains from areas that are within a 50-mile radius of London. So if
Oh yeah, you are. Yeah, no, you are. Yes, I mean, people from Peterborough regularly commute out down to London.
Yeah.
Sometimes even further north than that. No, you're absolutely correct about that. And yeah, I mean, Manchester is doing pretty well in all fairness. Manchester does attract a lot of people. Leeds has started to attract a lot of people, a lot of financial services in Leeds, and that's starting to attract people. I think Liverpool less so. I do like the city of Liverpool. I think it's a lovely place. And hopefully, I mean, they've got a mayor of Merseyside, haven't they? Hopefully he can sort of bang the drum a little bit more and get more inward investment coming into the city. But I think the further away you get from London, the more problematic it is. And the city of Hull is sort of doing a lot better than it was. And there's the renewables industry there. Siemens are building a big plant and things like that. So things are getting better, but they're not brilliant by any means. And then you start getting up into some of the other places in the northeast of England, and they're not doing very well at all. No. Simple as that. They're not. Which was the idea of the devolution settlement and having these sort of metro mayors. So, I mean, a good friend of mine's Ben Houchin was the Conservative mayor of the Tees Valley. And I did interview him once and asked what he did. And he's there to bang the drum for the Tees Valley area, to look for investment opportunities, to look for various grant opportunities, and try to help regenerate the area. He doesn't get involved with emptying bins or schools or anything like that. It's a very strategic role that he's got. And maybe the answer is, for where, I mentioned it, Hull and East Riding. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know. But yes, it is more economic than it is political. I would agree with you.
Well, we've covered nearly 40 minutes. I don't know how much we've changed the world in that time.
No, all I will say is that one thing I agree absolutely with Boris Johnson on is I think the United Kingdom has been the most successful union in the history of the world. I think when you look at what we have achieved so much. And let's face it, the many great Scots over the years. We are greater than the sum of our parts, and we need to be optimistic about it. I do fear that Scotland will go independent at some point, but I'm not going to die wondering. I'm going to be fighting for the union, and I just hope that more English people get behind this, as well as our friends up north, to fight against this separatist stuff, because I think it'll be disaster for Scotland. I think it really will.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Andrew, and I hope you have a good weekend.